Welcome to today's journey through history. In this video, we'll first touch on Mecca's history that set the stage for Muhammad's arrival and the transformative journey that would change the world forever. So join me as we explore the beginnings of Mecca and then dive deep into the life of the Prophet Muhammad, his challenges, triumphs, and the legacy he left behind. Let's begin. Mecca, situated in the Western Arabian Peninsula, is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world, and the stage for the monumental changes that came with the advent of Islam in the 7th century. Its significance predates Islam by centuries, owing to its central location in ancient caravan trade routes. Merchants from Yemen, Syria, and beyond would converge here, exchanging goods like spices, incense, and textiles. Mecca's society was deeply tribal, with the Quraysh tribe at the center of power. Clans often competed for resources, power, and prestige. Blood feuds lasted generations, fueled by a strong sense of tribal identity. Although Arabia was rife with tribal conflicts, the city served as a neutral ground where rival tribes could meet, fostering a unique culture of cooperation despite the region's tribal conflicts. This made it an important site for pilgrimage, bringing economic prosperity to its inhabitants. The city's most famous landmark, the Kaaba, was a revered sanctuary even before Islam. According to Islamic tradition, it was originally built by Prophet Abraham and his son Ishmael as a house of monotheistic worship. However, over time it became a center of polytheistic practices. The Quraysh tribe maintained control over the Kaaba, which housed over 300 idols representing the gods of various Arabian tribes. The powerful Quraysh capitalized on its religious and economic significance. They managed pilgrimages to the Kaaba, making the city a hub of both commerce and spirituality. The city's sacred status prohibited violence within its boundaries during the months of the annual pilgrimage, serving as a neutral stable ground for trade and diplomacy. But even within the Quraysh, internal rivalries between clans like Banu Hashim and Banu Umayyah were common. This little detail is the key to the historical obscure basement's door that's been gate-kept for centuries. We will refer to it in future videos. This period is often referred to as the Jahiliyyah, or Age of Ignorance, characterized by social inequality, tribal warfare, and polytheism. Yet, it was during this time that the groundwork for Mecca's later transformation under Islam was laid. Now that we've understood the geopolitical nature of the region during that era, we are ready to dive in. The year 570 AD, traditionally called the Year of the Elephant, due to the miraculous event involving King Abraha's failed attempt to destroy the Kaaba. In this year, on the 12th of Rabi al-Awwal, a little boy named Muhammad was born to Abdullah, a member of the Hashemite clan, whose lineage traces back to Ishmael, the son of the biblical prophet Abraham, and his wife Amina bint Wahb, a noblewoman from the Quraysh. The boy's mother recounts having a smooth pregnancy and described visions and dreams foretelling her child's greatness. In one of the dreams, she sees a light emanating from her that illuminated the palaces of Syria. During her pregnancy, the boy's father, Abdullah ibn Abdul Muttalib, died, leaving Amina widowed. Sadly, 6 years later, Muhammad's mother would also pass away. The young boy, in immense hardship for his age, became an orphan under the care of his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, a respected leader of Mecca and the custodian of the Kaaba. But 8 years later, in 578 AD, his grandfather passed away and Muhammad was placed under the guardianship of his uncle, Abu Talib, a respected and prominent figure in the Quraysh tribe. Their clan, Banu Hashim, was known for its noble lineage, influence, and religious service to the Kaaba, and its only rival was the Umayyad clan. In keeping with Arab tradition, infant Muhammad was sent to live with a Bedouin family for his early childhood. Halima al-Sa'diyah and her family fostered him, where he spent years in the desert, learning the pure Arabic language and culture. During this time, the family of Halima reportedly experienced blessings in their household and livestock after taking Muhammad in. This further reinforced the belief that Muhammad was divinely protected and destined for greatness. And growing up, Muhammad worked as a shepherd during his youth, a common occupation among the people of Mecca. As he grew older, he began working in trade. His honesty and integrity earned him the nickname Al-Amin, the trustworthy, among the people of the city. At the age of 25, Muhammad was employed by a wealthy widow named Khadija bint Khuwaylid. Impressed by his honesty and character, Khadija proposed marriage to him, making her his first wife and the only wife until her death. They had 4 daughters and 2 sons, though all the sons died young. Prophet Muhammad would often remember her, speak of her, and receive visits from her friends, to whom he showed great honor and respect because of their connection to Khadija. After her death in 619 AD, dubbed the Year of Sorrow. This year saw Prophet Muhammad lose 2 of the dearest people to him, Khadija and his uncle Abu Talib. One particularly poignant example of Muhammad's love towards his wife is found in the famous hadith narrated by Aisha, the Prophet's later wife, who often spoke of Khadija. Aisha once asked the Prophet about Khadija, as she had never met her. She said, "O Messenger of Allah, you speak so much of Khadija. I was young and didn't know her." The Prophet, peace be upon him, replied, "She believed in me when no one else did. She accepted Islam when people rejected me. She supported me with her wealth when others deprived me. Allah blessed me with children through her, while I had no children from other women." In another example, Aisha reported that on one occasion, after a revelation, the Prophet, peace be upon him, was deeply saddened by the passing of Khadija. The Prophet would often mention her with affection, and on one particular day, as the Prophet was with Aisha, he spoke of her in such glowing terms that Aisha became jealous and asked why the Prophet still remembered Khadija so fondly. The Prophet responded with deep emotion, "She was the best of women. Allah gave me children through her and not through any other wife." In December 22nd, 609 AD, at the age of 40, while meditating in the cave of Hira on Mount Nur near Mecca, Muhammad received his first revelation from the angel Gabriel, Jibril in Arabic. The message was, "Read in the name of your Lord who created." Quran, verse 1, chapter 96. This marked the beginning of his prophethood and the revelation of the Quran. Prophet Muhammad began preaching the message of monotheism in private, telling people that there was only one God and rejecting idolatry. His early followers were few, mostly close family members and friends, including his wife Khadija, his cousin and later son-in-law Ali ibn Abi Talib, Abu Bakr, and the freed slave Bilal. After receiving further revelations, the Prophet was commanded to proclaim his message openly. He began to publicly preach in Mecca, calling people to worship the one true God and reject the polytheism prevalent in the city. This caused a great deal of hostility among the Quraysh elites, who saw Muhammad's message as not only a threat to the established social order and their power, since now he has the message of God, granting him the highest authority rather than the elites, but they also saw it as a direct catalyst that will disintegrate the stream of wealth generated by the yearly polytheistic pilgrims. Motivated by the fear of loss of their prestige and wealth, the Quraysh used various methods to persecute and suppress the early Muslim community. The leaders ridiculed and mocked Prophet Muhammad and his followers. They called Muhammad a madman and accused him of being a poet or a sorcerer. The Muslims were often belittled and insulted publicly. The Quraysh would call them disbelievers, polytheists, and mock their beliefs. They would often say that Muhammad was leading people astray. They used slander and derision, accusing him of making up lies about the gods of the Quraysh. They also accused the Muslims of abandoning the traditional ways of Mecca. In 615 AD, as the persecution intensified, the Muslims sought refuge in other lands. The first migration occurred when a small group of Muslims fled to the Christian kingdom of Abyssinia, modern-day Ethiopia, hoping to find peace and safety there. The Quraysh sent emissaries after them and attempted to pressure the Christian king, Negus, to expel the Muslims, but he refused, recognizing the sincerity of their faith and allowing them to stay in his kingdom. Around 617 AD, when the Quraysh saw that Islam was gaining followers, they imposed a social and economic boycott on the Muslims and their supporters. This was known as the boycott of Banu Hashim. Muhammad's clan, the Banu Hashim, was initially caught in this boycott because they had refused to turn him to be executed by the Quraysh and threatened an all-out war if they continued their pursuit. The Muslims and their supporters were isolated and forced to live in harsh conditions, with no access to food or trade. This boycott lasted for 3 years, during which many early Muslims suffered severe hardships. It caused economic ruin for many Muslims, and some even died due to the harsh conditions. The Quraysh hoped this pressure would force the Muslims to abandon their faith, but it only solidified their resolve. Some early Muslims, from minor clans and slaves, were subjected to physical abuse in an attempt to force them to recant their faith. Some were beaten, tortured, and even killed for refusing to renounce their belief. To list a few examples, Umayyah ibn Khalaf had Bilal ibn Rabah, a former slave who converted to Islam, dragged across the hot sands of Mecca with a heavy stone placed on his chest, demanding that he renounce his faith. Bilal's unwavering response, Ahad, Ahad, meaning one, one, referring to the oneness of God, became legendary. Sumayya bint Khayyat, a frail woman, and her husband Yasir were also among the earliest Muslims to face severe torture. Sumayya was killed in the most brutal way, after having each of her legs chained to 2 camels going opposite ways, on the hot Arabian sand and under the scorching sun for days. Her agony finally ended when Abu Jahl thrust a spear through her heart in front of her husband and their son, Ammar. As the Muslim community continued to grow, the Quraysh tried to persuade Muhammad to stop preaching by offering him wealth, power, and even the position of leadership over the Quraysh, if only he would abandon his message. The Quraysh leaders sent a delegation, spearheaded by Abu Sufyan, to Muhammad, offering him money and power, suggesting that he could become the ruler of Mecca if he would stop criticizing their gods and their way of life. Muhammad famously rejected these offers and made it clear that he was driven by divine commandments, not personal gain. Around 621 and 622 AD, a significant event in Islam called Al-Isra and Al-Mi'raj took place. The Isra meaning the night journey and Mi'raj meaning the ascension. During the Isra, the Prophet was miraculously carried from Mecca to Jerusalem, and during the Mi'raj, he ascended through the 7 heavens, where he received divine instructions. In Jerusalem, he led prayers with past prophets, and during his ascent, he received the command for the 5 daily prayers. The event symbolizes Muhammad's special status and the connection between Islam and previous Abrahamic faiths. It is celebrated annually on the 27th of Rajab. This event is foundational to Islamic worship and theology. In 622 AD, the Quraysh leaders decided to send one man from each tribe to attack Muhammad at night in his bed, thereby ensuring his elimination without any consequences, since Banu Hashim won't be able to retaliate against the entirety of the tribes. On the night of the assassination attempt, the Prophet was aware of the plot. According to Islamic tradition, he had received a revelation from Allah informing him of the danger. To escape the attack, Muhammad took a strategic step. He instructed his cousin Ali ibn Abi Talib to sleep in his bed to mislead the attackers, while he quietly left the house and headed to the home of his companion Abu Bakr. When the Quraysh attackers arrived at the Prophet's house, they found Ali sleeping in the Prophet's bed. This delayed the realization that he had escaped. When they learned that Muhammad had fled Mecca, they were furious and dispatched search parties to track him down. However, despite their efforts, the Prophet and Abu Bakr remained undetected until they reached Medina. He and Abu Bakr took a route that avoided the main roads and stayed hidden in the cave of Thor for 3 days to elude the Quraysh, who were in pursuit. During their time in the cave, a remarkable incident occurred. A spider spun a web across the entrance and a dove nested nearby. This natural occurrence convinced the Quraysh that the cave was empty, thus allowing the Prophet and Abu Bakr to escape safely. Shortly after this, the Muslims started fleeing at night for Medina. After the Muslims migrated to Medina, the Quraysh became increasingly hostile, and in 624, the Quraysh led a military campaign against the Muslims, culminating in the Battle of Badr. The Quraysh sought to destroy the growing Muslim community and punish the Muslims for their refusal to give up their faith. The Muslims, despite being vastly outnumbered, won the battle, which was a significant turning point in the conflict between the Quraysh and the Muslims. Between 622 and 630 AD in Medina, the Prophet established the first Islamic state. The Constitution of Medina, considered one of the earliest known written constitutions in history, was drafted, which established the rights and duties of all the residents of Medina, regardless of creed or race. Its main features were social and political rights. justice and legal framework, tribal alliances and autonomy, the establishment of a unified community clarifying that the Muslim community, under Prophet Muhammad's leadership, would function as one cohesive group despite their diverse backgrounds, and religious freedom. The document ensured freedom of religion for all groups. It allowed the Jewish tribes and other non-Muslim communities to practice their faith freely, and made it clear that Muslims and Jews would not be forced to convert or abandon their beliefs. Over the next few years, there were several defensive battles. Yes, you heard that right, defensive. I will elaborate on that, but in another video. These battles were set off by the Quraysh and mainly their leader Abu Sufyan, whose name was Sakhar ibn Harb ibn Umayyah, and they include Battle of Uhud in 625 AD, which was a defeat for the Muslims at the hands of the military genius Khalid ibn al-Walid, Battle of the Trench in 627 AD, where the Quraysh laid siege to Medina, but the Muslims successfully defended the city. After years of hostilities, in 630 AD, the Quraysh broke the treaty they had made with the Muslims, prompting the Prophet to march on Mecca with an army of 10,000 Muslims.
Army of 10,000 Muslims? Muhammad is a warlord. Oh, Islam bad. Very, very bad.
Karen, please shut up and let me finish explaining. The city surrendered without a struggle. Here is a small collection of the Prophet's sayings upon entering the city. This is the day of mercy. On this day, Allah has made this city sacred, and it is forbidden for anyone to kill or shed blood here. And in reference to their hostility, he said, "What do you think I am going to do to you now?" The Quraysh leaders, fearing retribution, responded with humility, saying, "You are a noble brother, the son of a noble brother." Muhammad then replied with, "Go, for you are free." In another hadith, "I will say to you what Joseph said to his brothers. No reproach this day will there be upon you. Allah will forgive you, and He is the most merciful of the merciful." Another example, "Yes, whoever enters the house of Abu Sufyan is safe, and whoever closes his door is safe, and whoever enters the mosque is safe." The city was peacefully taken over, and the idols in the Kaaba were destroyed. Except for ornated statues, or icons depending on the source of the report, of the Virgin Mary with Jesus in her lap. Muhammad explicitly ordered the Muslims to leave them in their place. They remained in the Kaaba until they were lost during the Umayyad siege of Mecca in 683, where the Kaaba was severely damaged by catapults, with some accounts stating that the Kaaba's walls were set on fire.
Is that all you got?
Oh, no, that's just the tip of this iceberg. Read, read!
Around 631 AD, a Christian delegation from the city of Najran visited Muhammad in Medina. Despite efforts to convert Muhammad to Christianity, the two sides did not agree on theological matters. The event was a public theological dispute and a remarkable instance of religious debate and challenge. Let's take a quick look at Najran's history. Najran was an important oasis town, home to a large Christian population alongside a significant Jewish community. One of the most prominent sites was the Kaaba of Najran, a Christian shrine at Jabal Taslal, which attracted pilgrims for over 40 years during pre-Islamic Arabia. The shrine was burned, along with thousands of Christians, when Du Nuwas took control of the city. Christian missionaries, such as the bishops of Najran, preached at significant Arabian marketplaces like Mina and Ukad, often using camels as pulpits. In the early 6th century, the Himyarite king Du Nuwas, who had converted to Judaism, launched a brutal campaign against the Christian community in Najran in retaliation for the burning of a synagogue. This persecution included the massacre of Christians in Najran, the destruction of churches, and forced conversions to Judaism. The most infamous event involved the martyrdom of Najran's Christians, including the execution of Arathas, which is referenced in the Quran, Surah 85, verses 4 to 8. The estimated death toll from this incident ranges up to 20,000, with some sources stating that the sole survivor, Dusdu Talaban, fled to Constantinople to seek help. This persecution left a lasting legacy in Christian literature, with martyrs like Rum, a noblewoman, being remembered for their unyielding faith. Their martyrdom became a symbol of Christian heroism across the Near East, and the city became a pilgrimage center, rivaling Mecca in significance for some time. The leader of the Christians martyred during the persecution, Al-Harith, was later canonized as Saint Aretas by the Roman Catholic Church. The martyrdoms are commemorated in various Christian liturgical calendars, including those of the Roman Catholic, Armenian, and Ethiopian churches. After the interaction, known as the Mubahala, the Najrani delegation and Muhammad established a treaty, guaranteeing the Christians' security, religious freedom, and property rights. The treaty concluded that Muslims would provide protection for the Christians and that the Christians would not be compelled to convert. In exchange, the Christians were required to pay a tax, jizya, but were exempt from the Muslim tax called ushur, which translates to tithe.
Oh, look. Jizya. They had to pay money to be left alone. Jizya, jizya. Warlord, warlord. Bad. Islam, bad.
Karen, I swear to God, if you don't shut the up and keep interrupting, I will send your dumbass to Abu Jahl. Sorry guys, back to the video.
Here I come. Oh, here I come. Oh.
As to what is this jizya, who it is that needs to pay the jizya, and there's a discussion among the ulama as to who pays the jizya. Some say the Jews and Christians are definite. Whether the mushrikun are part of that or not, that's the discussion. I don't want to go into too much, but I'm giving you some of the things they said. Yeah?
The jizya, a tax imposed on non-Muslims in Islamic states, has historically been a complex institution, blending fiscal, social, and military considerations. Rooted in Islamic jurisprudence and grounded in the Quranic verse, "Fight those who do not believe in Allah and the Last Day, nor comply with what Allah and His Messenger have forbidden, nor embrace the religion of truth from among those who were given the scripture, until they pay the tax, willingly submitting, fully humbled." Verse 29, Surah At-Tawbah. The verse refers to the post-war tax and tribute paid by the faction that has started the war. The jizya also served as part of the Covenant of Protection, Dhimma, extended to non-Muslims living under Muslim rule. The term is used interchangeably in both contexts. It was collected annually, with the specific amounts varying according to Islamic jurisprudence. In the Hanafi school of thought, the tax was set based on economic class. It was 48 dirhams, approximately 144 in today's US dollar, for the wealthy, 24 for the rich class, and 12 dirhams for the middle class, around $36. The jizya could not be compounded. In the Shafi'i school, the minimum was set at 1 dinar, approximately $63, but it could be increased based on the state's discretion. The Maliki school was influenced by the precedent of Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab. It prescribed 4 gold dinars, approximately $283, for the Byzantines and 40 silver dirhams, around $120, for the Persian Empire. In the Hanbali school, it was uniformly set at 1 dinar for both Persians and Byzantines. This tax was exclusive to adult, male, able-bodied, and economically active non-Muslims of military age. Exceptions included women, children, the elderly, those with disabilities, slaves, and religious figures like rabbis and priests. Farmers, teachers, and others contributing non-military services were often exempt, depending on the legal interpretation. For instance, the Shafi'i and Hanbali schools emphasized exemption for non-combatants men who have civilian occupations since they never participated in the war, while the Maliki school required workers with income to contribute. Barring those in debt, the jizya served a dual purpose. It exempted non-Muslims from military service and offered them protection under the Muslim state. It was a substitute for the military obligation required of Muslim citizens and ensured that non-Muslims could maintain autonomy in practicing their religion and managing their internal community affairs. If the Muslim state failed to provide protection, Muslim jurists argued that the funds must be returned. An example of this principle in action comes from the Prophet's companion Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah, a general during the early Islamic conquests. He ordered all of his commanders to return the jizya collected from Christians in the Levant when the Muslim forces were mobilized for battle and could not guarantee their protection at the start of the war between the Muslims and the Eastern Roman Empire. This gesture reportedly inspired local Christians to pray for the Muslims' victory, illustrating the reciprocal nature of the Dhimma Pact. Arnold Toynbee, known for his expansive work on history and civilizations, in his book, A Study of History, touched on various aspects of Islamic governance, including the concept of jizya. He described it as a practical fiscal policy and that it was not merely a punitive measure. Instead, it functioned as part of a social contract wherein dhimmis were exempted from military service and received protection from the Muslim state. However, after the Prophet's death, this tribute will go on to become a tool to generate gold and silver for the Muslim rulers, with only a few rare exceptions which we will address in the next episodes. During their conquests, it was levied on non-Muslims who chose not to convert, even if they had not requested protection or engaged in any conflict with the Muslims. As a side note, the term existed in the pre-Islamic era and appears in early Byzantine and Persian literature, where it simply referred to tribute. It was not an Islamic innovation. In reference of the Quranic verse, Atawaba 29, some YouTube sheikhs, who often throw around Arabic words when addressing non-Arabic speakers to showcase their unmatched intellect and knowledge, and seem to have won the ugliest facial hair championship 7 years in a row, argue that the verse is clear divine command to go and fight and impose the tribute. Their beards seems to absorb some of that knowledge and intellect, a price only a true champion is willing to pay. They often overlook the numerous verses in the Quran that permit warfare solely for the purpose of defending one's home and life. Here are a few examples. Verse 46, chapter 29, states, "Do not argue with the people of the book unless gracefully, except those of them who have transgressed. And say, we believe in what has been revealed to us and what was revealed to you. Our God and your God is only one, and to him we fully submit." At-Tawbah verse 13 states, "Will you not fight those who have broken their oaths, conspired to expel the messenger from Mecca, and attacked you first? Do you fear them? Allah is more deserving of your fear if you are true believers." If I were to detail all the arguments from the Quran, the Prophet's accounts and scholarly perspectives, thoroughly disproving and proving each one, this section alone would take 4 to 6 hours. Now, before we move to the last section, I have to go over some key concepts that are going to be of extreme importance to understand the next episodes. These concepts commonly fall victim to the fallacy of equivocation. Shockingly, this is overwhelmingly common among the Muslims themselves and the YouTube bearded creatures. Number 1. Islam, which encompasses terms such as to willingly submit to the will of God in peace and good faith, absent any form of evil, physical or verbal harm, and any current or future ill intentions. Number 2. The Islam, which refers to the Islamic faith as a religion. Islam, an indefinite noun, meaning peace and, or safety, combined or individually. Muslim means a person who is striving for the embodiment of the characteristics cited, or has already embodied them in part or whole. The Muslimun in the Quran means the Muslims, any number greater than 3 Muslim individuals. The believers those who have submitted but also have faith in God's angels, the Day of Judgment, and a few other things. They are referred to as al-Mu'minun in the Quran. The word, the people, refers to humanity in the Quran, al-Nas in Arabic. Number 3, which is the most important one, now please pay attention, a kafir for one individual, or kufar for any number greater than 3 of individuals, is a term that has nothing, I repeat, nothing, to do with non-believers or non-Muslims or whatever you decide to call them. The term comes from the root word kafara, which translates to cover. A kafir can only be identified and called as such, only by himself and or by God and through his messengers. A kafir in the literal sense is someone who buries or covers up something, be it an abstract or concrete. In the divine sense, it means an individual who had God's message delivered to him lucidly and in a proper manner, and after fully understanding and comprehending the information it contained, in his mind and his heart, sees that without a doubt that it is indeed true, and then proceeds to deny it and call it bluff for any reason other than the fear of persecution, loss of property or life. The person is then decreed a kafir by God through his prophets. Please pay attention. If that same individual has reasoned that the message is inherently false, a hoax, a scam, or just mythology in his heart and mind, that person, in this case, falls under the category of the people, i.e. mankind. And in the Islamic faith, just like the Muslims, Christians, and Jews, he will be judged by God, to the best of his knowledge and capabilities, and if he were an overall decent person with no innocent blood on his hands, he shall go to heaven. The best example of the meaning of the term is in Surat al-Hadid, verse 20. The verse proceeds to say, "This is like rain that causes plants to grow, to the delight of the planters." In the screen, I put out the Arabic and English text. In the Arabic version, the planters are referred to as the kufar, because it's another word for farmer, since farmers bury seeds under the dirt, and that's literal meaning in Arabic. If you can't read Arabic, translate the text of the verse from Arabic to English in Google. You will see that the word planters is translated to disbelievers, proving my point, as the Arab natives have always translated it as planters or tillers of the soil in this verse. To my personal knowledge, there isn't a single translated copy of the Quran that has the disbelievers in that specific verse that refers to farmers. And the sad part is that it wouldn't surprise me to see it and see the YouTubies defend it to the teeth. And indeed, boastful ignorance is the blight of the soul. Moving on. In March of 632, during his sermon at Arafat, the Prophet delivered his famous farewell sermon, summarizing the key principles of Islam: equality of all Muslims, respect for life and property, and the importance of following the Quran and his offspring, or the people of his household, or Ithra and al-Bayt in Arabic. To be exact, the people who were purified by God in his revelation. God only desires to remove defilement from you, O people of the house, and to purify you completely. Al-Azab, verse 33, known as the verse of purification. In the hadith of the cloak, Al-Kisa in Arabic, the Prophet Muhammad gathered his daughter Fatima, his son-in-law and cousin Ali, and their 2 sons Hassan and Hussein under his cloak. He then said, "O Allah, these are my al-Bayt, people of the house. Cleanse them of all impurity and keep them pure." Upon this, he recited the verse, "Indeed, Allah only intends to remove the impurity from you, O people of the house, and to purify you with a thorough purification." Quran 33:33. Shortly after the farewell pilgrimage, Prophet Muhammad fell ill and passed away on June 8, 632 AD, at the age of 63 in Medina. His death marked the end of the era of prophethood, and his legacy lives on through the Quran, his teachings, and most of the Muslim community. Prophet Muhammad's life transformed the Arabian Peninsula and the world. Under his leadership, Islam spread rapidly, uniting tribes and establishing a powerful civilization that would span continents. His character, as described in the Quran and Hadith, continues to serve as a model for Muslims, embodying qualities such as mercy, justice, patience, and humility. The message of Islam, as conveyed through the Prophet, remains relevant to billions of people around the world today. we have encapsulated the key events of the life of Prophet Muhammad from birth to death, offering a comprehensive view of his journey as the final prophet of Islam. In the next video, we will go over what happened the day he died, the caliphate that was established after him and the 4 caliphs, the civil wars that would later come to ravage the Muslim lands and claim thousands of lives, and the transformation of Islam into a political tool to conquer lands, to amass wealth, to persecute and eliminate political dissidents, and the transformation of the free Muslim state to become a kingdom under Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. Thank you for watching. Hit the like button if you've enjoyed the video and subscribe if your curiosity has been piqued about the next videos.